Okay, Erev Tov l'kulam, Erev Tov. We're going to start this Hazkara for the late and very dear Rabbi Desmond Maizels. I want to thank everybody for participating. It's good to see many familiar faces and also some new faces. I want to thank our partners in this tonight, Telfed and Rav Klein. Rav Daron, this is now two events that we've done in the last few weeks. I think we have to pick something really happy for the next event. So we'll have to find something. But thank you all for participating. And you know, when I heard the news about Rabbi Maizels passing away this last Thursday, I thought, oh my God, that must have been COVID. And unfortunately, it was not. It was, fortunately or unfortunately, he had a heart attack, and he was taken from us before his time. And I know that many of you here feel connected to Rabbi Maizels, and the reason we're doing this event is not just to honor his legacy, but also for people to share some stories and memories and recollections and some jokes. And so we hope this will bring comfort to the Maizels family, and we hope and pray that his neshama should have an aliyah. So I want to begin. We're going to recite the first parak of Tehillim, which I think really captures Rabbi Maizels, his menschlichkeit, his connection to Judaism, the straightness of his values. And so I'm going to read the first parak of Tehillim. Afterwards, I will share a few words of Torah in memory of him. We'll continue with a Kalmalei Rachamim, and then I want to open it to the floor. I want to open it up to all of you to share stories, recollections, and we can share it together in remembering Rabbi Maizels. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach b'atzat risha'im v'derech hata'im lo amad v'moshav leitzim lo yashav ki im b'torat Adonai chefetzo ובתורתו יהגה יומם ולילה ויך עת שתול פלגי מים אשר פריו ייתן בעיתו ועלי לא ייבוא וכל אשר יעשה יצליח לא כן הרשעים כי אם כמות אשר תדבן רוח על כן לא יקומו רשעים במשפט וחטאים בעדת צדיקים כי יודע אדוני דרך צדיקים ודרך רשעים תאבד. Happy is the man who has not followed the counsel of the wicked or taken the path of sinners or joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of the Lord is his delight, and he studies the Torah day and night. He is like a tree planted beside streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, whose foliage never fades, and whatever it produces thrives. Not so the wicked. Rather, they are like the chaff that wind blows away. Therefore, the wicked will not survive judgment, nor will sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord cherishes the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is doomed. And indeed, Rabbi Maizels was a very, very righteous man who walked in the ways of Torah, the derech of Hashem, and he did tremendous good. I want to share a Dvar Torah based on this parasha. In this parasha, there is an all-consuming mitzvah which is presented to the Jewish people. And that mitzvah is Zechirat Yetziat Mitzrayim, remembering the exodus from Egypt. This is something that we do on a daily basis. This is something that we do more extensively on the Seder night. We tell the story, the Exodus story. So many mitzvot are related to Yetziat Mitzrayim, the mitzvah of Tefillin, of Tzitzit. I'm sure you could name a number of them. Shabbat, all the Chagim, Seder Pesach, Pidyon Chamor, Pidyon Haben. So many mitzvot are connected to this mitzvah of remembering the exodus from Egypt. It is the foundational idea in Judaism that God took a people out of Egypt, out of slavery, and he redeemed us, and he made us into his special nation. And that act of kindness on God's behalf demands that we respond in kind, that we bring compassion to the world, that we fight for those who are oppressed, that we model God's behavior and we emulate the kindness that he gave to us. All of this is captured in this foundational idea of Zechirat Yetziat Mitzrayim, remembering what happened when we left Egypt. We teach our children, V'higadata levincha b'yom hahu lemor. We read this in the Shema 3 times a day. We have to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim at every moment in our lives, in Kiddush, in Birkat HaMazon, in everything that we do. Yetziat Mitzrayim is present. That's the beginning of Jewish time. That's T1. Everything starts there. The reason I'm bringing up this idea is because what Rabbi Maizels did for Cape Town Jewry is he was the foundation. He was the very foundation of the community in a quiet, unassuming way. Without Rabbi Maizels and his unbelievable rabbinic talents, I don't know what Cape Town Jewry would be like today. Rabbi Maizels was responsible for shchita, for having kosher meat. Can you imagine a South African Jewish community without kosher meat? Rabbi Maizels was responsible for being the Moel in Cape Town. He would walk from Camps Bay to Claremont. He would walk to Constantia on a Shabbat in order to do a Brit Milah for a young Jewish child. Rabbi Maizels was a Dayan on the Beit Din. And in this capacity, he would also marry young couples. Rabbi Maizels was the head of the kashrut agency in Cape Town. Rabbi Maizels was a teacher and a leader of one of the most important communities in Cape Town. Without Rabbi Maizels, I don't know what happened to whether Cape Town Jewry could continue to exist. Rabbi Maizels was a sofer. All of these fundamental needs that we have as a community, all these fundamental aspects of Jewish life, Rabbi Maizels was the one, along with others as well, Rabbi Suiza for many years, who helped to provide these services to the Jewish community, to help us keep these mitzvot, to help us maintain Yiddishkeit in Cape Town. And, thinking about all these different things that he did, actually many of them are found in our parasha, in Parashat Bo. Rabbi Maizels was a sofer. It's in this parasha we talk about tefillin, Lamantia Torat Hashem Beficha, and we tie tefillin around our arms. Rabbi Maizels was a Moel, and the Jewish people are commanded to do Brit Milah before they leave Egypt. That was what gave them the zechut, the merit to leave Egypt. Rabbi Maizels was a shochet, the Korban Pesach. We first learned about the Korban Pesach, which was shechted in front of the Egyptians. Rabbi Maizels was a dayan, he was a religious judge. And in this parasha, Moshe is commanded, HaChodesh Hazelachem Rosh Chodashim. You, Moshe, who was the first leader of the Jewish people, presides over the Beit Din, the court of law, which establishes the new months. The notion of kashrut, which also was under Rabbi Maizels' authority, he would travel worldwide to help to bring kashrut to Jewish communities around the world to ensure that products were kosher. This is about separating between Am Yisrael and the nations and the Egyptians, and also eating the Korban Pesach, kashrut. So many of the foundational things that he brought to Cape Town Jewry, we find in our parasha, at the very birth, the moment of birth of the Jewish people, of the Jewish nation. And in my 2 years in Cape Town, I got to know Rabbi Maizels. He was an acquaintance, a rabbinic colleague. I came to respect the work that he did in his quiet, unassuming way. And many of you have also known him, some of you for many years, dating back to Bnei Akiva, and we look forward to hearing some of these stories. And my, our tefillah for the Maizels family is that first of all, they should have comfort and b'sarot tovot. Hashem should heal and complete and give them, they should know how much he gave to South African Jewry and the zechuyot, the mitzvot that he performed on our behalf, the services that he provided the Jewish community should be a melitz yosher for us down here. And we definitely need more of these zechuyot. And we feel very blessed that we were able to meet such a special, unique Torah leader like Rabbi Maizels. I'm going to ask Kalan Shachat to recite Kamalei Rachamim. Yehi Zichro Baruch, may his memory be for a blessing, and B'chavod, Kalan. And then I'm going to ask all of you to share some stories and memories of your many years of friendship with Rabbi Maizels. B'chavod. I'm going to ask everybody Stand if you can, please stand. I know we're in our own homes right now, but out of respect for my Maizels, let's please stand. Sorry, pause. One second. Yeah, just. Okay, take two, Colin.
Shochein b'meramim, hametzei menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, v'malot kedoshim, otearim, kezohar harakia, mazhirim, ed nishmat Arav Tzvi ben Yeshayahu Freida shehalach leolamo bavur she'anachnu mitpalelim be'ad azkarat nishmato לכן, כל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר גנביו לעולמים, ויצרור החיים את נשמתו בגן Adonai u'nagalato ve'yanuach v'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar
Amen. Thank you, Colin. I'm going to ask everybody if you would like to share a story or memory, write in your name to the chat, and this way we could go through everybody in an orderly fashion instead of people having to interrupt. I'm just going to ask that when you're not speaking, please keep yourself muted so that it doesn't interrupt others. And let's start with Rav Doron. Would you like to share? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but would you like to share something? And then people could write in their names, and we could share other stories as well. B'chavod, Rav Doron.
Thank you, Rav Eitan. It's an honor for us at Telfed to be co-hosting this special memorial evening in memory of Rav Desmond. We all of us here have some special connection to him, and he all touched our lives and our souls in a unique way that's made us better people. I remember when I was the Aliyah Shaliach in South Africa, so I was there for 4 years in that position. And not every rabbi is prepared to have the Aliyah Shaliach come and talk in his shul, right? I'm there to take away his congregants. And Rabbi Maizels was always so welcoming together with Esther. I stayed in their home, and he was always so happy and excited when I came to the Camps Bay Shul to come and talk. And he would give me the pulpit whenever I wanted, as many times during the Shabbat that I wanted to speak, just for me to bring the message of Eretz Israel and the love for Israel, to promote Aliyah. And he told me, he studied at Merkaz Arav. He said the biggest shock at Merkaz was when they heard that Desmond Maizels was going back to South Africa. They couldn't believe that a graduate of Merkaz Arav would be going back to South Africa. And Rabbi Maizels said to them, you just don't understand how much work there is to do there and how there's a need for spiritual leadership there. And I will go there and I will do my job and I will bring about a love for Eretz Israel and I'll instill a love for Eretz Israel there in South Africa. And that's what he did. And he was that unique person who was a Merkaz Arav graduate, who had the pulpit and the rabbinate, and as you mentioned, so many features. He really took it upon himself. He said, if I'm going to be in the diaspora, then I'm going to be the absolute best that I can, and I'll do the absolute most that I can for Am Yisrael and for Eretz Israel. And really, that's what he did. And the connection that I had with him was a connection both as a friend, as a colleague in the rabbinate, and he certainly touched my life, and I learned a lot from him. And when I came back to Beit Shemesh, Rabbi Oren Duvdevani, who's today, he's the head of the Kashrut of Tzohar. I was speaking to Rav Oren, and Rav Oren learned with us in the Gush. You probably remember him from those days. And Rav Oren came to me and he was talking to me about how he was going to be working with Tzohar and how he needed to move into the world of Kashrut, and he needed to, learn as much as possible about Kashrut. And he said, he said, I'm telling you this because there's one man that everybody tells me I should go and talk to if I want to learn about Kashrut, and that's Rabbi Desmond Maizels. He said, do you happen to know him? I said, yeah, I happen to know him. So Rav Oren Duvdevani traveled from Israel to South Africa to meet with Rabbi Maizels and to learn about Kashrut from Rabbi Maizels, because he was known to be a world authority on Kashrut in the different industries. And we can thank, and today Tzohar and the Rabbinate and their Kashrut department can thank Rabbi Maizels for the high standard they have, because Rabbi Oren Duvdevani learned from Rabbi Maizels. So this is just a small example of the greatness of Rav Desmond. Really, he'll be so missed by so many people, not only in the Cape area, not only in South Africa, but really he touched people worldwide. And may his memory be for a blessing, and may he inspire us, each one of us, to become better people and to learn from his good ways. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Howard Schumann, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. I met Rabbi Maizels. To me, he's always been Desmond, because I met him at Bnei Akiva camp in 1967. He was this little unassuming guy wandering around with a bandage on his toe. The story was that he dropped a piece of corrugated metal that he was using to cover the roof of the Cheder Ochel onto his toe and cut it off. He had no complaints, and I didn't have much more to do with him, as he was going to university the following year, and I was going straight from Bnei Akiva camp into the South African infantry. The following year, I started my studies in medicine, and there was Desmond. He hadn't been the greatest student, so he had failed one subject, and in those days we were allowed one strike, and so he repeated the year. Most of the year he spent at the Herstzler hostel looking after and teaching the pupils or the boarders who were there. So the next year, we were together in second year medical school at the campus next to Herstzler Hospital. Second year medicine, anatomy. Anatomy is the anatomy laboratory. There are bodies all over the place, and Desmond joined our group of Jewish students. And I must admit, although when I told him the story about 3 or 4 years ago, he claimed not to remember it, but I was there at the moment that he decided to be a rabbi. We were scratching around somewhere in the upper arm of our body, and it was one of these late summer afternoons, and the laboratory smelt of chloroform, and it wasn't very pleasant, and we were scratching around and looking in the textbooks and trying to find out what we were doing, and all of a sudden Desmond says, I've had enough, I'm going. So I thought, okay, fine, Desmond, have a good evening, bye. And I didn't realize it, but he wasn't just taking the afternoon off. he had finished his medical career and started his rabbinical career at that very moment. Go back a week or two or three or a month before that particular incident, and Desmond's going back to Port Elizabeth for one of the holidays, and he needs some stuff from me. So I said, fine, on your way back home, pop into my house, my parents' house in Camps Bay, I'll give you what you want. So he arrives, you remember what a mini miner was? That's what he had. It was a very small car. So I go out into the driveway and I've got the book, and Desmond's parked there, and I bend down to put it in, give it to him, and I see he's sitting in the driver's seat. Behind him, the car is packed, but perfectly packed. Half the back seat is taken, and the front seat is empty, and half of the back seat is empty. And I look at him and I look at this and I say, Desmond, what's going on? You packed all your stuff up to the ceiling nearly. You could have spread it out over the back seat. So he says, no, you don't understand. I packed it that way on purpose so that there'll be place for a hitchhiker and his luggage. So Desmond already, as a young man of 20, was worried about other people. Fast forward a bit, and I had a lot of problems with my divorce. She wanted to remarry. She wanted to remarry a Kohen. And we had to try and find a way of getting around this problem. And my sister had gotten divorced in South Africa. The Beit Din in Cape Town had done it. And who was on the Beit Din, if not Rabbi Maizels? So I phoned him up and I said, Desmond, you know, this is the problem. I really don't know what you can do because, you know, you signed on the get here. And, but can you look into it? He says, listen, we will try to be as lenient as possible. That I'm signed on the get and that we've given the get doesn't mean that we didn't make a mistake. In his quiet and confident voice, and okay, he looked at it and we couldn't do anything about it. But his attitude and his willingness to help was something that I'm sure all of you know very well and characterized him very much. One of the few times that I ever saw Desmond puzzled without an answer was I didn't really make a habit of visiting South Africa in my first 10, 15, 20 years in Israel. And I came back, I think it must have been in the late 1980s, and I went to the shul in Camps Bay because I grew up in Camps Bay. And comes time to call up people to the Torah, and I'm sitting quietly minding my own business, and I call up Rishon Sheni, Cohen Levi, Shlishi, and one or two others, and then there's a silence, and I see out of the corner of my eye that Desmond and the Gabaim have a little black book in their hands, and they're paging through it and looking at each other and looking at me. Eventually, Desmond sends one of the Gabaim to come and ask what my name is. So I give him my name, they call me up, I read the Torah, and I'm about to go down, and Desmond says to me, listen, Howard, what's going on here? I can't understand something. So, sir, how can I help? He says, listen, you see this little black book? Your father's name's in it, your brother's name's in it, everybody else's name's in it, yours name isn't in it. What's going on here? So Desmond, very simple. Rabbi Pecton, Rabbi Neifeld knew my name off by heart. I was one of the few guys young guys that came to shul. So we had a good laugh about that. A month ago, exactly today, a month ago, Desmond conducted the funeral for my mother. My mother was dying of corona, and it took her 2 or 3 weeks. And I was in contact with him, and we arranged that he would do the funeral. Unfortunately, there couldn't be a minyan. And I told Desmond the boys who would be there were my cousin's boys that their mother hadn't been converted by halacha. So he said, thank you very much, no problem. I'll get hold of people. I said, how are you going to get hold of people? They said, there's 2 guys that work at the abattoir. They're Jewish, they'll come, I'll pay them 100 Rand each, and that'll be that. And that was that. There was a minyan. My cousin was able to be my shaliach and say Kaddish there. My brother was too sick with corona to be able to do it. But we relied on Desmond, and Desmond didn't let us down. And the last little vignette, about 5, 6 years ago, I was in Cape Town, as became my habit after my father died. And I would, no, it must have been longer than 5, 6, about 10, 11 years ago, before we moved my mother to Oasis. And I went to shul, and Desmond asked me to come to his home for Shabbat lunch. We had a lovely lunch. And he was walking me to the door when I turned around to him and said, Desmond, you know what's going on? You've been here long enough. Your children are all in Israel, or they're all coming to Israel. When are you going to join us? He says to me, Howard, I decided years ago that I would be the last one here. As long as there are Jews in South Africa, I will be here to do what has to be done. And until that time, I'm not coming to Israel. That was Desmond. I'm sure that you've all got similar stories. I repeat, I apologize for the Desmond. We've known it, I'm still using present tense. I knew him from 1967. He was always Desmond to me. He was Rabbi Maizels in company. We had a quiet, unassuming, long-lasting friendship. His departure is all our loss. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Howard, and we wish you Chaim Aruchim, long life because of your loss as well this last month. I'd like to ask Roy Sher. Roy, b'chavod, would you share some memories?
Hi, good evening, everybody. As Howard also refers to Rabbi Maizels as Desmond, I met him in 1970-71 in my little town, Durbanville. Cape Townians should know what Durbanville used to be, a little dorp. And at that time, there were about 18 to 20 Jewish families in our town. And Rabbi Maizels at the time was studying at Merkaz and came to visit his folks in Port Elizabeth. So our shul recruited him to be the Chazan for Yamin Noraim. He stayed in our house. In fact, he stayed in my bedroom. And that's how, as a kid of 8 years old, I got to put in Desmond. And even till the last time we spoke, which was about a year ago, I still put in Desmond. A wonderful, amazing gentleman. I remember sitting on my bedroom floor at that age of 8. He took out his shchita knives and he showed me the different sizes, chicken, sheep, cows, each length. He showed me how you tested with a fingernail. And I actually remember pushing my fingernail across the knife at that tender age to find out how these knives worked. At the time, he gave me a kippah. It was my first kippah sruga that I got. And I actually still have it today. I keep it with treasured heart in fond memory of him. Not so long ago, I met him for the last time. It was about 3 years ago. He came to Yerushalayim and he was visiting his family. I went to fetch him. I brought him to visit my mom. We were in the same shkuna as us in Ramot. And they had a lovely reminiscing facels chat. It was just an absolute an honor to have, the privilege to have known him so well and kept in contact for so many years.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Thank you. Jack, would you like to share some memories? I'm gonna ask it. Yeah, just unmute yourself. Yeah, there.
I knew Rabbi Maizels for many years. In fact, the story that Howard told about the corrugated iron that slipped off the roof. We were building the Chadarochel in Machane, and he was standing at the bottom giving orders to tell us what to do and what not to do. And the piece of corrugated metal slipped off the roof and hit him on the foot. And he did quite a lot of damage to him, but he never complained. And that was, he was a very solid, good person. I think one of the best stories that epitomizes Rabbi Maizels is the story in South Africa regarding Kingklip. Most of the Rabbonim, I know, held originally, especially here in Israel, that Kingklip was not kosher because it used to shed its scales when it came out of the water. But Desmond was, first of all, he was an expert in kashrut. And second of all, he was very, very adamant about this story, and he didn't give up. And the fact of the matter today is that in all the kosher shops in South Africa today, you can buy kinkla. That was Desmond. If he believed in something, he used to do it ad sof. Here's Zichron Baruch. Colin's got a fantastic story to tell you about Desmond.
Okay, Colin, you're on.
Okay, so my story is rather of a humorous nature. I didn't know Desmond Maizels very well. I had intermittent contact with him over the years, and in fact would eat at his home the few times I visited Camps Bay Shul. Generally, I had family who lived in Camps Bay, and at least for one of the meals on Shabbat, I would go to his house. And the first time was about 15, 16 years ago, whatever. So I think a Shabbat lunch there, and I'd heard this sort of urban legend, which I said, without sort of being irreverent or disrespectful, I would like to tell him the story that is spoken about him and ask him if the story is actually true. So he said, with pleasure, don't worry. He says, I believe whatever you have to say, I've heard worse. So I repeated the story as follows and asked him whether it actually happened. And the story was as follows. I've always liked wine and kosher wine, etc. And there was a story that Desmond Maizels was an expert in sort of being used by the few wine estates in the Cape to make the wine kosher. First, mainly it was grape juice or Kiddush wine. And then over the years, there were more sort of table wines also being manufactured in the Cape. And, it all had the hechsher of the Cape Beth Din. And he was the person who physically was on the site and became an expert in the kashrut of the wine. And the story went as follows, that he got a call from a winery in Italy, said that they would like to make one of their runs, one of their harvests, part of it kosher. And they understand they've done serious research that he does this type of work. And although he's far away, would he be able to, supervise the kashrut of the wine? And he said, what time of the year are you thinking of, etc. And they said, well, July. Well, he said, July is actually very convenient because he said it's a winter in South Africa and I have to be in Europe because I have to go visit various factories around Europe to check the kashrut for the Beth Din of South Africa. I don't remember, it could have been Koo or something, whatever it was. He said, well, he had to be there 3 weeks to monitor the situation and to employ the right people, etc. Anyway, so that is exactly what happened. He went to Europe for work of the Beth Din and stayed an extra time. They'd agreed a fee, and he sort of had the most wonderful time on this wine estate in Italy, and supervised the kashrut of the wine, which was then issued. I can't remember if it was just a Kiddush wine or a regular wine, doesn't really matter. Anyway, after this time, and he became quite friendly with the owners of the estate. As he was about to leave the last day, they wished him well. He met them. They gave him an envelope with his check that he was due. And as he was leaving, he said to them, I'd like to ask you something. He says, he said, there is a very prestigious Beth Din in Milan under Rabbi, I think it's Gorelik or something like that, who's quite well known. And he is an expert in the field of kosher wine, and he could have been used. He's much nearer. And also the Kadassia in London, Kadassia Beth Din, have somebody also who monitors wine and gives a hechsher of the Kadassia in London to various wines in other places. And of course the OU, because the main market for this type of thing is in America, and the OU have, their people, their mashkichim around the world are experts on this type of thing. And he said, it's interesting, I don't know how you got to me. So they said, look, it's absolutely correct. We got to you, but we did our research. We know that there's the OU, and we spoke to them, and they are experts. We spoke to the fellow in Milan, Rabbi Gorelik. I can't remember his name exactly, doesn't matter. And we spoke to him. We looked into the matter carefully. We also spoke to the Kadassia in London, and then we looked into your situation. And having thought about the matter, you were the cheapest. Okay. And I said to him, that's the urban legend. I said, how far is that from the truth? And he said, it's exactly the truth. That's exactly what happened. He said they worked out the exchange rates and whatever. So to this day, or up to a few years ago, there was sort of some very well-known Italian wine that had a hechsher of the Bethtin from Cape Town, which was quite ridiculous. But the truth is that beyond that humorous story, as Rabbi Goldstein said in his wonderful tribute to Rabbi Maizels, he said Rabbi Maizels was known. He said generally rabbis are experts in looking for problems. Rabbi Maizels was famous for looking for solutions. And he says, and he tried to accommodate, and he tried to, I have family in Camps Bay, as I said, and, they have become more sort of connected to Yahadut and to Yiddishkeit, not 95% through Desmond Maizels, 100% through Desmond Maizels. In other words, his sort of approach and, his sort of ability to connect to people by speaking Afrikaans, which he spoke almost as a first language, and other. He was a rabbi in Bloemfontein, and he was such a salt of the earth guy, and even if one had a sort of not a particularly close a connection like the previous two people, Howard and Roy, etc. His sort of spiritual presence. Firstly, his physical presence. But his spiritual presence is almost, will be missed to an extent that you can almost palpably feel, and you hear these messages from Cape Town, that it's almost an irreplaceable loss on a spiritual and a physical level. So Yehi Zichro Baruch.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Herbie, would you like to share a story or two? Just unmute yourself. Herbie, can you hear? Yeah. Yeah, you, Herbie Jackson.
Okay, I just want to tell a story which took place in 1964, 1965. It was first Port Alfred camp, and I was in Gurim, and Desmond, Rabbi Maizels, walked around the campsite. Forget about his toe, I don't remember if it was that year or the year after. But he walked around the campsite with like a hat. Those we remember. Howie Schumann will remember, and I'm sure Jack remembers. I was 9 or 10 years old, and we were 4 Johannesburg guys in a tent with a guy from Cape Town. So Desmond came to the tent and he said, "Where you guys from?" He said, "Before guys." Hello.
Yeah, sorry, Herbie. Just you unmute, Herbie. Everybody else is muted except for you. Yeah, Herbie, just unmute yourself. Herbie?
Herbie's muted.
Yeah. No, I muted everybody because other people were making noise.
You're back? Sorry.
Okay, you're back.
And
so 4 guys in the tent. Go back to that. There are 4 guys in the tent.
4 guys in the tent from Johannesburg and 1 guy from Cape Town. So Rabbi Maizels, Desmond came around and he said, "You guys know each other?" We said, "We 4 guys are from Emmarentia. That's a suburb in Joburg. And there's some guy from Cape Town who got into our tent." So he said, "Okay, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? What's your name?" So he asked me what my name is, and I said, "My name's Harold Jackson." And the guy from Cape Town said, "Oh, that's very interesting. I'm Harold Pactor." So Desmond said, "Listen, guys, you can't have 2 guys with the same name in a tent. From now on, your name's Herbie and your name's Hershey." And that's a story from 1964, 1965 that stuck. That's how we got our names. I'm Herbie and Hershey Pactor's Hershey Pactor. That's it. That's how I remember Desmond Maizels.
And his father was the predecessor to Desmond Maizels in Camps Bay.
Reverend Pactor, yes. Reverend Pactor was the rabbi in Camps Bay for a long, long time. He came from Stellenbosch, and then he went to Camps Bay before Desmond came to Camps Bay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Herbie, so Rabbi Maizels was not your Moel, but he gave you your name, right? So
what's that? I have a lot of stories about him, but
okay,
I just remember that he actually gave me. Where did Herbie come from? It came from that camp.
Thank
you,
you,
Herbie, and you Hershey. Hershey stuck with his name.
Thank you, Herbie.
For 55 years. Yeah.
Thank you, Herbie.
That was Rabbi Maizels.
Okay, next, who else would like to share a story? So, Cohn? So, would you like to share something? Okay, you could write in, if anybody would like to share another story, you could write in the chat or raise your hand in the, or just speak out. You could just speak out at this point. So, yes, Ronen, go for it. Ronen Chaim. You just have to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, hello.
Okay, my name's Julian Leventhal. I'm ex-Port Elizabeth. I've got about 40 to 50 stories for you, so I'm not going to bore you. Basically, I go back with Desmond 61 years. 61 years, okay? So there's two sides of this, to the story. There's me and there's my wife. My wife has the singular honor of being with Desmond Maizels every day for a number of years. Why? She was his secretary. So that's where we go. So I met Desmond when I was in Bnei Akiva. I started going to Bnei Akiva at the age of 12. And well, the friendship lasted. Of course, I called him Julian. I called him Desmond. He called me Julian. En ons het saam Afrikaans gepraat, and Xhosa, who we both speak, was coming from Port Elizabeth. And obviously, the friendship has lasted. I'll tell you one story. There are many stories, many stories. At my 7th day, okay, I gave a little speech, and I had to bring in the story that my bar mitzvah happened to be on the 18th of October. It just so happened that my 70th at the Campsite group was on the 18th of October. So I stood up and I said, well, I share this wonderful day with Rabbi Desmond Maizels, who was sitting right there. And I'd like him to say a few words. He said, no, all I want to say is, do I have to go half-half on the 70th birthday party? But that was his sense of humor. Another time, we used to go there very often on Friday nights, and we were sitting around the table, and we had roast beef, and I said, this roast beef is absolutely outstanding. And he said, yes, I'm sure it is. I knew him well. Anyway, I don't have to go into details about it, but a brilliant man, a brilliant shochet. And, after slaching on a Monday, he would come over here and we'd speak for at least an hour about the good old days in Port Elizabeth. We'd speak Afrikaans, we'd speak Xhosa. It was the most amazing guy, most amazing fellow. Anyway, I'm going to miss him terribly, like many.
Thank you, Judah. We really appreciate your thoughts. Who would like to share next? Just speak out. You could just speak up or raise your hand, or you could write into the chat. Ronen Chaim, is that? Yes, Ronen. Okay, you just have to unmute yourself. You could press the space button or respond to my request to unmute. No, we can't hear you, Ronen. You have to unmute first. No, you have to unmute. We can't hear you. Just press on the space button and hold the space button down. Okay, here we go.
1 minute.
Okay. Yes, we can hear you now. Okay, so start from the beginning.
All right, my name is Shlomo. My Ronen coming to my sound. Okay, my name is Shlomo Marcus. I know Desmond. He came. I was still a bachelor to my late father's shul in Friedhoek. He used to come every Shabbat. He used to be hostel master at Herzliya school, and he came there to learn there. And we were from there, our friendship will there. Say one day, my father said to him, Desmond, you're not to be a doctor. You're to go to Shiva and go to Shiva to learn. And from then onwards, our friendship was always do it together, always. When I met him, I was a Mashgiach in Protea. He came to visit his aunt there, and where I was Mashgiach, where we saw his hours for many years ago. Okay. My father was instrumental for him to give him an encouragement not to do medicine anymore. My father had the Daf Yomi for over 50 years in his Knesset, and the Desmond every Shabbat, without failure, he was that in the afternoon when my father used to give the Daf Yomi on the Shabbat. He was there with me, is there, learning there.
Thank you. Okay, next, David Samuels, is that a hand up? David Samuels, you just have to, no, okay. You're just doing some exercise and stretching. Okay, would anybody else like to share something in memory of Rabbi Maizels at this point in time? Is that a hand up, Larry Shane? Okay. Okay, so yes, of course, yes.
Rabbi?
Yes, Larry.
I do have a story about Rabbi Maizels. In fact, I met him in 1980 in Bloemfontein. And it was a Friday night service. And as soon as the service had concluded, I saw all these children running to the bimah and hugging Rabbi Maizels and him hugging them. And of course, the sweets came out of the pockets from all sides and everybody was really very happy. At that time, 1980, Reverend Pachter was already deciding to move to Israel. And I was on the committee of the Kamspai Shul, and I came back and I said that I'd found the replacement for Reverend Pachter. He joined, I think, in 1983. He came to Kamspai and he bar mitzvahed both our children, and he named Taryn in Shul on Shabbat Chaya Sarah. But there's a wonderful story. Rabbi Maizels had a phenomenal sense of humor, and Hillel, on a Shabbos afternoon, used to sit on my lap in Shul. I think he was 6 or 7. And this Shabbos, he says to me, Larry, what do you do for a living? So I thought, well, what should I tell him?
Larry, I'm listening to the story. Be careful.
So you know it's a true story. I've got a witness.
So we want to welcome Hillel, and I see Gila there as well. Welcome. It's great, very special to have you with us. Okay, Larry, go on.
So I thought, you know, an importer of agalot, pushchairs and strollers and high chairs, how can Hillel understand this? So I said to him, you know, Hillel, I work for a very rich man. He says to me, how rich? I said, he's very, very rich. Has he got a name? I said, yes. I said, he has got a name. I said, well, so he says, what do you call him? I said, receiver of revenue. And he sits on my lap and a few minutes go by. And he says to me, Larry, tell me, has he got any daughters? Which for a 6 or 7-year-old at that time was quite a funny comment to make. But of course, his father got to hear about the story as well. And I'm not sure that the rabbi thought that it was so funny, but he did laugh. And that story, Hillel can verify, goes back probably nearly 40 years, 35, 36 years. Those are the memories of Rabbi Maizels.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Okay, would anybody else like to share some stories, some memories, recollections, jokes? I just want to tell to all the Maizels, it's very special to have you here. And on behalf of everybody here, we wish you nechama, and briut, and beserot tovot. And we've recorded this session so that everybody who shared stories beforehand, we'll send it over to you so you can watch and hold these memories. And I'm seeing Esther also, Rebitz and Maizels also. It's very special to have you with us. And
Thank you.
we wish you beserot tovot and comfort and so I was just saying we've recorded this session so that you could all listen to the stories and memories. Would anybody else like to share something? Would anybody else like to share a memory, a thought?
I'd just like to say also thank you on behalf of Telfed to the Maizels family for joining us. It's an honor for us. And Rav Hillel is actually the official Telfed volunteer in Ariel. When we do have Olim asking about Ariel and thinking about moving there, we put them in. We send Rav Hillel's contact details, and I think that you can see that the message from his father, from Rav Desmond, of helping people and being concerned for the Yeshuv of Eretz Israel, that continues in the family. So chizku ve'imtzu.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. If I can just say thank you very much for doing this. I'm sorry we couldn't come on the beginning, but we had Shiva Zoom, while it was going on. But I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for doing it. Yeah.
And I just want to say, and we could all say this together. It's obviously because of COVID restrictions, we can't all be there, but let's just say together, Hamakom yinachem etchem betoch shar avalei Tzion v'Yerushalayim, should be comforted amongst the mourners of Tzion, and we miss Rabbi Maizels very much, and he did so much for the Jewish community of Cape Town, for the world, for the Jewish people at large. And may his memory be for a blessing. Yehi zichro baruch. So I'm going to, I'm going to sort of, we're going to keep the session going. If anybody wants to, stay on and chat and schmooze, and I'm just going to turn the recording off.